Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Welcome everyone to Adoption Day 2022. My name is Linda Bobrin. I am the Bucks County Register of Wills and Clerk of Orphans Court. We have a jam-packed program today, so I'm going to get right to it. As you can see, we have a little bit of music. We have a little bit of information, hopefully a little bit of education, and some really amazing personal and hopefully heartwarming stories of adoption. We're going to start with a little bit more music. So I'd like to introduce to you Mervyn Toussaint, Lonell Johnson, and Cantor Neil Schnitzer singing What a Wonderful World.
Thank you, Linda. Hi. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the warm sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, they're also in the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands. They say, how do you do? What they're really saying is, I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, they are also in the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? What they are saying is, I love you. I hear babies cry. We watch them grow. They will learn so much more than any of us will ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Next, I'd like to introduce someone who's no stranger to us, to our program and the adoption process. I was honored to have Commissioner DiGirolamo participate in my first Adoption Day program and share some of his own adoption stories. And I'm very grateful that he's willing to do that again for us today. So I'd like to introduce Commissioner Dean DiGirolamo.
Good morning, everyone. Good to be with you. And what a wonderful world indeed, because we're here to celebrate the wonderful world of adoption. And it's great, Linda, thank you so much for putting this on, and to the other elected officials that are here today, Chris, Colleen, Pam, and somebody in the back there, I'm looking, Commissioner Marsaglia. Thank you for being here, and Marge and your staff, and your staff, Linda. Just a great day today to celebrate the world of adoption. And I brought a picture with me, and it hangs in my office up on the 5th floor, and there's a picture of my family. And it is about 7 or 8 years old right now. But just as I told my story before, me and my wife Donna, who has been married 48 years, I'll be 49 in July, it's a long time, getting close to 50. We got married, we had 2 boys of our own, Jean and Anthony, and then we were told that we couldn't have any more children. And I guess people adopt for a variety of different reasons, but we very much wanted to have more children, so we looked into adopting, and we initially looked into adopting a Caucasian child here in the United States. And back at that time, we were told that it would take 5, 6, or 7 years to be able to adopt a child, and this is 40 years ago. So we looked into our church, the Catholic Church here at St. Ephraim's, and Catholic Social Services, and they had an adoption program overseas in Korea, and which we were told the process would take about a year, which was much better for us for what we were trying to do. So we put in for the adoption, and in about a year's time, we were matched with a little baby, an infant baby, over in Korea, and this is Gina, who just turned 40 years old in October, and so we actually adopted her, and it was just wonderful because they flew in from Korea, and you picked them up at Kennedy Airport up in New York City. So you're actually sitting waiting for the plane to land, and it's like sitting in a delivery room waiting for a baby to be born. And the plane lands, and they had an aide that came with the child. They walk off the plane and hand you a little baby girl, and we named her Gina. And then 3 years later, we decided to adopt again from Korea, and our little Mary came. And Mary's going to be 37 in a couple of weeks, and she just actually got married back in July. And it just worked out for us and our family, just worked out wonderfully. It really did. It was a real joy, and we got along great. You know, you're raising children, you have little bumps in the road here and there, like everybody else does. My son, Anthony, he's 42 years old. Him and his wife, Tara, got married and found out that they couldn't have any children. So they decided to adopt, and they adopted from birth little AJ, who's African American. So as you can see, my family, you got a very diverse family. I mean, it almost is like a picture of what the United States of America looks like. And again, people adopt for a variety of different reasons, and it's, you know, and Marge, you know better than anybody else, there's such a need out there for children. There really is. And, you know, if I could just give a message to everyone, you know, it works, it really does. It's just wonderful to be able to adopt, whether they're infants or they're older or they're toddlers. it is just such a wonderful experience. And again, there's just so much need out there. So Linda, thank you really for having me. You know, I've been here before and told my story, but again, we've got 5 grandchildren now, so it's just worked out great for us and our family. So good to be with you, and thank you.
Thank you, Gina, appreciate it. Over the years, we've honored various people and organizations associated with the adoption process. This year, we've chosen to honor the Bucks County Department of Children and Youth Social Services Agency. In looking back at prior Adoption Day programs, it seems odd that we've never honored this department before. It's likely because, like most people you work with regularly, you just kind of take them for granted. The Bucks County Children and Youth Social Services Agency files petitions with our office maybe 3 or 4 times a week. They are tasked with determining if children are being neglected or abused, if they are in safe homes. They're doing home studies and investigations, providing education, and when necessary, foster care. They're facilitating visitation, and when that can't be done, effectuating removal and termination of parental rights to facilitate adoption. They aid in searching for birth records to help adoptees find their birth families. In addition to all of this, Children and Youth assists with funding of community organizations such as the YWCA, Family Services, and the Network of Victim Assistance, as well as helping with the distribution of grocery store gift cards for the United Way to residents in need, among many other services offered by them. But to give you much more information about the Department of Children and Youth, I'd like to introduce their director, Marjorie McCann. Marge is a licensed clinical social worker with a master's degree from Temple University. She began her career as a social worker at Wood Services in Langhorne before accepting a position as a caseworker at Bucks County Children and Youth Social Services Agency in December of 1989. I know that's almost 33 years because that's how long I've been married. And in her almost 33 years here, Marge has been promoted to supervisor, manager, deputy director, and since the fall of 2019, director of the agency. Marge was very involved in adoption services and led a post-adoption support group for over 10 years. During her career, Marge was awarded the Angel in Adoption Award in 2013 from the United States Congressional Coalition on Adoption Institute. She was named Bucks County Employee of the Year in 2015, and in 2019 was one of the Bucks County YWCA's Women of the Year. In May of this year, Marge received the Bucks County Community College Alumni Professional Achievement Award. Marge and her husband, Tom, who's here today, have been married for 48 years and have a son, Joshua, also here today, who we'll hear more about later. So I'd like to ask Marge to come to the podium now. Welcome.
Thank you, Linda, and thank you so much for recognizing our agency. It is most appreciated, and I know our staff appreciate it more than anything. Thank goodness I don't have to sing. I don't usually do much public speaking, so hopefully everybody will understand if I get a little nervous about this. I want to talk about the agency in general, just to start. Bucks County Children and Youth was established in 1965 to take care of any children who might be neglected or abused in the community here in Bucks County. If you haven't heard about us, you might know about an entity that takes children away from their families. That's usually the reputation that we have. That's about the minimum of what we do. Just to give you some statistics. In this last fiscal year, 21 to 22, we investigated 4,700 reports involving 4,700 families and 8,600 children. We worked with 1,139 families in our General Protective Services units, which go from 0 to over 18. And in foster care, but we do have foster care because children do need to come into care at times. And we have little less than 200 children in foster care right now. But why am I here today? Every so often, there are times when families are unable to resolve issues that would ensure the safety of their children, and they are unable to provide appropriate care for their child. And sometimes, when they are placed in foster care, and we do everything we can to return children to their birth families, but there are times when situations exist that we can't do that. And when that happens, our staff work very hard to find homes for children, loving, long-term, permanent homes. So now I'd like to tell you a little personal story about how I got into this. Back when I started in 1989, my husband, who I will out here as well, we had been trying to start a family as Commissioner DiGirolamo. And we went through some treatment, infertility treatment, et cetera. It didn't work. We're told about adoption. I'm like, oh, I don't know. Kind of got used to the idea. Fast forward to 1994, a supervisory position became available in our adoption division. And I said, if I'm going to get into adoption, I want to know everything about it because I want to do it right, as best as I could possibly do. So I applied, got into it, learned everything. I have bookshelves of books. I tried to read as much as I could because I wanted to know what the child would experience, what I would experience, how we could both get through it the best. I just looked at them. It's not easy. Okay. All right. Keep going. All right. So we went through the home study and investigation process about us. We did have an infant placed with us in the fall of 1995, but the infant's birth mom decided that she wanted to parent him, and he left us between Christmas and New Year's of that year. To say it was devastating is probably a good word for it. It was a very difficult time for us. But about 3 months later, because I was known in the adoption world and I was working a lot with adoption folks, somebody said to me, are you interested? Yeah, I'm still interested. I want to tell you about a little boy. Oh God, I'm nervous. Okay. So this is where the explanation comes into as to why some children are unable to return to their birth homes and why we have the division that we have that works very hard with families. So this little boy, he was placed for adoption by his birth mom when he was born, but she decided that she wanted him back after about a couple weeks. The birth mom she was only about 19 years old, didn't have very many supports in her life. She had a rough time, had some substance abuse issues, but she wanted to parent the boy. She loved the boy. Anyway, about 3 months old, birth mom takes this little boy to the hospital because he's having some problems. He has lesions in his mouth, and she didn't know what it was. So they gave her some cream or whatever and told her to come back in a couple of weeks. When she came back in a couple of weeks, the ER decided that they better do a skeletal survey on this little boy because what we find out a lot of times, you may see indicators outside, but you don't know what maybe is going on inside the child. When they did that CAT scan, they found out that he had 26 rib fractures, a cerebral fracture, a bite on his cheek, and burns in his mouth. They figured that the burns in his mouth came from overly hot formula, and they determined later on that birth mom's boyfriend at the time probably did what was called a compression on the child's chest and caused for the ribs to break, probably because he was crying too much. So little boy was placed in another county agency's custody in a foster home, and he did well there. The agency tried to locate the birth father, was never able to do that. They worked with birth mom, but as I said, she was young. She didn't have the supports that she really needs. As you all know, if you're parenting, it's not easy. Babies are difficult sometimes. So ultimately, they decided that they were going to look for an adoptive home. And at the time, everybody knew that I had lost a child previously. And I was contacted, and I was shown a picture of a little boy. And I was like, you know, is it gonna be disappointing again? Am I gonna lose a child again? Is this gonna work out? It was very, it was tough. But my husband and I started to visit with the little boy. We went to meet him. He was born in Allentown, and we went to meet him in an office up there. And he was running around a room like a little whirly dervish, which he still is. And the story we tell all the time is, I still remember it. It was a green linoleum floor, and this little boy rolls a ball to my husband, Tom. And I knew then, once the ball came to Tom, that it was over and he was ours. So, I love this little boy more than life itself, I want to tell you. It's been great. And in these situations that we do, and we have one of our adoptive parents here. I want to thank Chris for coming. We have an adoptive parent from our office. We have an adoptee from our office. We have a bunch of staff from our office who I'm very proud to work with. I am very proud to be part of this agency's history. I love the work I do. I love working with this staff who do an incredible job every day. And I thank them. But most of all, my heart is with that boy there. Love him very much. Thank you.
I forgot to tell you, you should bring tissues to most of these occasions, and it'll keep going. So next up, also from Children and Youth, happy to introduce Karen Stooping-Robos and Jennifer Horn. Karen has been with Bucks County Children and Youth for a total of 18 years, starting as a supervisor and since 2010 as a senior manager of the Permanency Division. She received her Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from Millersville University and her Master's of Arts in Counseling Psychology from Pepperdine University. She has worked in the world of adoption for over 30 years, including both domestic and foster adoptions and international adoptions. International adoptions included a lot of international travel, meeting children who are hoping for families willing to take them home. Karen also assists members of the Adoption Triad, both parents, adoptees, and adoptive parents, to reconnect later in life by doing search and reunion work. Jennifer Horn has been with Bucks County Children and Youth for 19 years. She has a master's degree in social work from Temple University. She has worked as a social worker and supervisor in the Permanency Division, as well as a program specialist for the Independent Living Unit. Jennifer has been a senior manager in the Permanency Division since 2020 and continues to manage the agency's living program. So please welcome Karen and Jennifer.
So I think I'll start with, it's really hard to speak after Marge and that story. I think we just wanted tissues and to kind of stop right there. That was I think I've heard it before, and it still gets to me. So I think I speak for both of us when I say thank you for having us. Thank you for recognizing our agency and our team and our work. I think we have an amazing team that works hard every day, and we are just so proud of the work we do and so grateful for the opportunity to do it. And, you know, I still love my job. Sometimes I wonder why after almost 20 years. But just a little bit about our team, because it really is a team effort. As Marge talked about a little bit, it is the goal of Bucks County Children and Youth to keep children safely in their homes of origin. And that's really done by our intake and in-home units. Some of them are here today too. When that's not possible, children do enter foster care. Many are placed in kinship placements. Those can be with biological relatives, family, friends, community supports that the children already know. And some of our children do end up in traditional foster care. The goal when children enter foster care is reunification with their birth parents. As Marge noted, our permanency workers work with the parents towards achieving that goal. However, when this is not possible, the agency will pursue adoption for these children, and the goal then is to provide them with a safe and permanent home through adoption. I kind of want to note everybody here because we have a great team. Our work in our permanency division is supported by our placement resources unit. We have some of those folks here as well. Their job is to recruit, approve, and support agency foster homes so the children can be placed there, and then once the children are placed, they continue to support the placement of those children in these homes. We have an independent living unit that works with our older youth and helps them gain the skills they need to succeed as adults. Additionally, we have paralegals in our office. They're actually not agency employees. They're placed through Family Design Resources. We have a few of them here today, and they make our work possible. They're placed in our county through a state grant, and their goal is really to support our work and expedite permanency for children. Another resource that we're able to use to expedite permanency and support adoption is a statewide adoption network. We like to call it SWAN. Through their services, we're able to work with provider agencies in the community, and we obtain child profiles for the children, child preparation services for the children, as well as adoption home studies for families. It's also a wonderful resource for recruitment for children that we need to match with families. And this agency also provides support through post-adopt services for adoptive families as well. I'm going to pass it to Karen.
All right, and now that you've learned a little bit about the agency, I'm going to share some information specific to the reason why we're here today, which is about adoption. Bucks County Children and Youth, as Marge has said, has been in existence since 1965. We've been doing adoptions for that long, and even though technology isn't quite as advanced then as it is now, we still maintain all of those records. And I can report that we have assisted in over 1,100 children finding permanency through adoption through Bucks County Children and Youth. For the social workers, there's going to be a couple numbers. Sorry, I know you're not all numbers people, but in the past 10 years, I did some tallying up. We have finalized 496 adoptions. 247 of those have been kinship adoptions. We try really hard to keep families and siblings together. It's not always possible, but we try really hard. In the past 10 years, as far as our sibling groups go, we have had 2 sibling groups of 5 children each that have been able to maintain together in adoptive homes. We had 6 sibling groups of 4. We had 17 sibling groups of 3, and 79 sibling groups of 2 who've all been able to maintain together in an adoptive resource. So that's been some great stuff, I think, that our agency has been doing. We also work on finding permanency for all ages. It's not just the babies, even though they're super cute. 32 of our adoptions have been youth between the ages of 13 and 22 years old. So we do try to find permanency for all the kids that we're working with. So a little bit about adoption. I actually went on the internet. I'm working in adoption for 30 years. I went on the internet and looked for definitions, and this one I liked a lot, so I'm going to share with you. It says adoption is defined as the social, emotional, and legal process in which children who will not be raised by their birth parents become full and permanent legal members of another family while maintaining genetic and psychological connection to their birth families. Adoption is a lifelong journey, as Marge has shared, and others, Jean also. It starts with the birth parents often making extremely difficult decisions that they cannot provide the day-to-day care for their child, and out of love for their child, this can lead to adoption. Sometimes it's us making that decision. Quite often, even when the families are involved with children and youth and the children come into foster care, they are still part of the planning process, and many of them are part of the decision-making to go forward with adoption, knowing that they can't take care of their children. At the same time, adoptive parents are going through the process of being approved to be eligible to adopt a child. The adoptee is then placed with the adoptive family. Once the Orphans Court judge finalizes the adoption, the work is really just getting started for the adoptive families. Adoptive parents and adopted children often become the unintended spokespersons explaining to family, friends, classmates, and sometimes strangers in the grocery store what it means to be adopted and part of an adoption triad. As Jen mentioned, there are supportive services in Pennsylvania that are available through SWAN, which again is the statewide adoption and permanency network. The good thing about this supportive service is it's actually not just for adoptive families. It is for those families who adopted through foster care. They could have adopted privately, internationally, or it could be a formal kinship family and a child placed in a legal custodianship. So these resources are available for everyone who's taking someone else's child in and caring for them. To explain the adoption triad a little more, this includes the birth parents, adoptive parents, and the adoptee. We always hope and try to facilitate ongoing contact between all members of the triad after an adoption is finalized. We believe this benefits everyone involved. But many times, there is no contact between the birth family and the adoptive family for many, many years. Or maybe the adoptee was not told they were adopted and they didn't find out until they were an adult. Our agency also provides what's known as search services. If any member of the triad, or even some relatives of members of the triad, who want to locate and possibly make contact with the birth parents, the adoptee, and/or siblings, we can assist with search services. Just yesterday, I spoke with a 40-year-old gentleman who shared that he was adopted by a wonderful family in 1982 through Bucks County Children and Youth. But he is now interested and ready to know more about his birth parents. And he thinks he might have a sister that he hopes to meet his birth family and get to know them. And I'm excited that we get to assist him in this next adventure. Adoptive parents are so very important in their child's life, and adoptees need and love them back. But there is always that other family out there, and we are happy to be able to assist in bringing all the members of the triad together who share an undying love for their shared child. We believe that every child deserves permanency and a family that both loves them and can take care of them. We continue to recruit foster families to assist us in caring for the children of Bucks County. So if you have ever thought about fostering or adopting, please consider checking out our website or contacting our office for more information. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce Hope Boyle, also from Children and Youth. Hope is a GPS caseworker. She's worked there for 16 years. They certainly seem to stay in your office, Marge. She's worked half of her time there in the permanency division, which includes adoptions, and the other half in home services. Hope says she loves adoptions, and you're about to hear why. She explains that the division's job to keep children safe within their family, or when necessary, keep them safe by placing them out of the home. She graduated with a bachelor's degree in psychology from Colorado State University and a master's degree in school counseling from Gwinnett Mercy. Hope is here to speak today, not so much as a caseworker from Children and Youth, but as someone who was adopted as 3 days old by loving parents. Come on up, Hope.
I didn't write anything down because I feel like I just want to talk to everybody. So to me, that makes it easier. I was adopted at 3 days old. Not technically, that waited to 6 months, but placed with my family in 3 days. My parents had fertility issues. They also had a child in the home. That child decided, or the parents decided they wanted the child back. Devastated. So they went through an attorney and a doctor, and they got word I was available. And it took them a while, but they decided to go with it, and they adopted me through that attorney and doctor. They named me Hope, so that you guys understand this, because they hoped I would stay. They were just so devastated from that loss, and I stayed, gave them a run for their money. And, you know, it's definitely been an eye-opening, I think, experience. Working at the agency, it's made me realize how grateful I am that I was adopted. I had a very close adoption. My birth mother was 17. She wasn't with the father, I guess. They gave me up. And years later, I went through our division with Karen Robos and found my birth parents. And to say it's interesting is she at least was appropriate and didn't say, like, I'm your mom or anything like that, but there was no bond. So it made me realize that I'm completely bonded with my family. Nothing was missing, which I just wanted to know who I looked like. I'm a redhead with a Jewish family, okay? Don't look like anybody. So I thanked her. She had a very hard life. I was, again, very grateful. Doing this job, I was very grateful. And knowing that these children are removed from a home, whether the parent, I believe all parents love their children. Whether they can do it, that's another story. Not everybody can be a parent. And you get a chance. And all the opportunity I've had, as an adult, I realized this, because of course I was a spoiled brat as a teenager, but it's just, I'm grateful. So I tell my mother, you know, in my 20s, I apologized and told her that as well, but I have a very close relationship with her. And adoption is just something that I'm very passionate about. I think what also made it very normal for me is my parents told me about it from day one. So I never felt like it was weird. I never felt like, you know, it was abnormal. It was, you're a miracle child, and you're here, and this is what we're gonna do. So I'm their parents. They didn't want to give me up when things were bad. They stuck with it, and that's what they are, they're parents. So my adoption's different in that sense that I did find them. I don't feel like I have a bond, but I'm just grateful. So I hope that most of our children that we're able to remove are the same way, and that's what I try to strive for when we remove children, is to put them in a place where they can excel. So that's my story.
So we have one more adoption story to share with you today. Initially, one little glitch in how this is going to work out. So initially, we were going to have, it's a twin story. We were going to have one of them appear via Zoom because she lives in Florida, and one was going to be here in person. Unfortunately, Emily, who was going to be here in person today, is ill. So they're both going to be here via Zoom. So hopefully Matt is setting it up so both of them are going to be here on Zoom momentarily. So I'm waiting for, yeah, I'm getting a thumbs up from the booth. So we have Emily Bushnell and Molly Sinnert. Ah, success, yay. So there's Emily and her daughter Izzy. And do we have Molly also? Hopefully. And they have a really remarkable, crazy story of adoption that they're going to share with us. They've actually gotten national attention recently for this crazy story, and I'm not going to tell you, I'm going to let them tell you. Hopefully, Emily, you're feeling better, and at least up to telling your story on Zoom. And unfortunately, we miss you that you can't be, I'm sorry you can't be here in person, but I'm glad you're here to tell your story. Do we have Molly on there as well? Are we good? Yeah? Okay, so I'm just going to, hopefully we can hear you, and I'm going to let them tell the story. So welcome, Emily and Molly, and I'll let you tell your story. Can we hear you? No, we're not getting sound, Matt. Here we go.
We're able to connect with you virtually. So thank you, Linda, for inviting us and for the introduction. My name is Emily Bushnell, and I am a Korean adoptee, raised right here in Bucks County for much of my childhood. Next to me is my daughter, Izzy, who not only made me a mom, but on 2 occasions in my life has played a pivotal role in my adoption journey. Most recently of those occasions, it was Izzy who initiated the search for my birth family. A thought that had never really crossed my mind as something within reach. But just last year, she led me to my long-lost twin sister, Molly Sinnert, who also joins us today.
Hi everyone, and thank you for letting us participate in this beautiful day to celebrate adoptions, and joining you from sunny Florida. I don't know how cold it is up there today, but I've got some sunshine on my face, so I'm feeling good and just happy to be here. I think part of the reason we're here is not only because we are adoptees, but also because our story is of reuniting as identical twins is definitely a little unique, although every adoption story is unique, and I think that's something important that every adopting family should understand. And you know, navigating the whole adoption process, having these support groups that are speaking here today is so important. So accessing those resources, I think is something that I look back and wish that we had more support as we were being raised. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about our reuniting and the story behind it. It was actually 23andMe that was the facilitator of our reunion, though, as Emily mentioned, it really was driven by Izzy's curiosities into her family on her mother's side, her Korean family. So as a young child, Izzy asked, after seeing a commercial for DNA kit, you know, could we do this? Could we maybe find mom's family? So she had submitted those, the sample for the DNA testing early, and it was, I think, a year and a half later when I decided to take the test. So what drove me to take the test, and this is something that you know, I think adoptive parents can think about, is I don't have any health history. Being an adopted child, it was a relatively closed adoption internationally. And so there were no health records. Every time I get a physical and go to see, you know, go for my women's well visit, I don't have anything to share in terms of risk factors. So we don't know what tests to run, what things to specifically look for. So that's what drove me to do the test kit. I didn't think that I'd find family, thinking, you know, most of our family is going to be in Korea. And maybe the one interesting thing I might find out outside of the genetic markers is, you know, whether or not I'm 100% Korean. So family was not on the forefront of what I hope to get out of the results. So it was March 3rd of 2021, just about 18 months ago, when my results came back, and it said I had a match with someone that I shared 49.96% DNA with. I couldn't tell from the picture how old this person was. You know, thoughts growing through my mind and my husband's mind were just, this can't be right. You know, wow, this is incredible. What does it mean? You know, you can find out a little bit more detail, and as we started to see the DNA profile of this person I matched with, it seemed pretty clear that perhaps this was a sibling's daughter, because it actually said that they predicted that my relationship to this person was that I was her mother. Not the case, I don't have children. So you can imagine being a female, being told you have a daughter, not ever having gone through labor, just how confused we were. So luckily I was able to connect through the 23andMe app. And that evening, I heard a response from Emily and Izzy. Basically, I messaged and said, you know, I don't know how we share this relationship, but I was adopted from South Korea in 1985. And the response was of the notion that my mother was adopted from South Korea in 1985. You must be my mother's sister. So the rest is sort of history, right? We met, we discovered one another March 3rd. We had our first phone call on March 6th. We decided not to meet face to face until our birthday, which was just going to be 23 days later. We were fortunate enough to meet in person down here in South Florida, where GMA3 filmed our meeting, and it was just so special. And we really do have Izzy's recognition of the importance of family and connecting with family to thank for all of that. And because of Izzy, we traveled. The next slide, you'll see pictures of us together in Austin, Texas, and also together as a family in Orlando. Where we got to wear traditional Korean hanboks, perform a traditional bow, a sebe, for our parents, our adoptive parents. It was the first times together that we were able to explore our biological culture. So it's really been special over the last 18 months to be able to do all these things together, and really just so grateful for Izzy connecting us. I do say grateful, and I want to just share this quote because it was National Adoptee Awareness Month in November. a quote that I came across, and it said, you know, just because we're grateful for the adoptions doesn't mean we're not grieving. And I think especially for Emily and I and for Izzy, you know, we grieve the loss of 36 years where we didn't know one another. And we also grieve the loss of knowing our biological families and our culture that we were born into. But we're very fortunate and grateful to have this opportunity to share our story and to become sisters and aunts and nieces to one another moving forward. On a lighter note, speaking to what we've been able to share, I was able to introduce Emily to some Korean barbecue. So on the next slide there, you'll see us at a Korean barbecue restaurant in LA. This was right after we had the opportunity to appear on the Ellen Show and again share our story on another platform. I am not a Korean food expert. I do love Korean barbecue, and I encourage anyone here that hasn't tried it to try it. But we're really excited to do more of this exploration into the Korean culture together, because as individuals, as separated twins, neither one of us had really had the motivation to do that. But I do think one of the highlights of us meeting 18 months ago was getting our families together, and we all met in May of 2021. Our adoptive families are very similar, and we just came together as if we had been one united family for decades. I am so grateful for this opportunity to hear stories of Emily being raised and understanding how her adoption experience played out. And there's some comfort in knowing that there were a lot of parallels in our lives. We were both adopted to Jewish families, and though we have a disconnection to our Korean culture, being raised in very similar Jewish households gave us a different connection to another culture. There's a lot of adoptees out there, transracially especially, or internationally, that grieve the loss of their culture or not looking like their families, not understanding, not feeling like they fit in. I've heard stories of Korean adoptees who go back to Korea and just feel like more of an outsider there, even though they look like everyone around them, than they do in the States. And so the cultural aspect for us was a little bit maybe masked. The lack of connection to that culture was masked because we had such strong Jewish upbringings, and we're very fortunate for that because today that is something that we're able to bond over. But I think mostly, you know, reuniting has really sparked for both of us that deep interest in understanding how adoption impacted our lives and shapes who we are today. And it really gives us the motivation to understand our origin and birth story. And so I'll let Emily talk a little bit about her adoption story.
To follow that, Molly. One difference between Molly and I is that she has a lot of experience speaking in front of big crowds, and I do not. Thank you so much for sharing. That was beautiful. So let's rewind back to when it all started. I was born on March 29th, 1985 in Jinju City. It's a small city outside of Seoul, South Korea. And until last year, all I knew about my birth and my adoption was shared in this manila envelope with pages of rice paper containing a mix of Korean and English records. Growing up, I always knew the file existed, and I looked at it only a small handful of times, probably through my teens. I knew that my surname was Young. I knew that my given name was Yoon Jin, which is my given middle name. I had a mother and a father who were married. I had supposedly 2 older sisters who were told that I was a stillbirth. I was a healthy baby, and it says in the papers I was abandoned. It was an unplanned pregnancy, and my parents were not stable financially, so they couldn't keep me to raise me. I did not know now, I did not know then, nor did my adopted family know that I was separated at birth for my identical twin. I'm so sorry. I was brought to the United States escorted by an older Korean adoptee. I was provided a free trip to travel back to Korea as long as she brought back a new adoptee baby with her to the States. My family met her at JFK Airport in June of 1985 when I was 3 months old. I was brought home to my new family, a mom, a dad, 2 older brothers in Yardley, Pennsylvania. I had a wonderful childhood and many opportunities to advance my education, play sports, I was exposed to the arts and music, went on family vacations, and I was raised in a very loving and supportive community of family and friends. I now work as an executive director at a law firm. I have a college education. I would say that my life has been pretty successful, and for that I'm very grateful. Because of the adoption, I was given a life that I otherwise would not have had in Korea. And my daughter was born in August of 2009 when I was 24 years old. And this was the first time that she played a pivotal role in my adoption journey. She was my first biological relative. She has my fingers, my toes, my nose, and we share some similar personality traits. She looks like me when she sleeps. That's probably why I was obsessed with taking photos of her while she was sleeping as she was growing up. But for the first time, I truly felt connected to someone in a way that I didn't know existed. As the years passed, a feeling of disconnection with my birth family grew exponentially. At this point, I realized that while my adoption has filled me up, there was another side of the story that needed my attention, laying dormant within. This is when I realized that adoption can coexist as both something to celebrate and as a trauma to nurture. This is a journey that both Molly and I are fortunate enough to take together. Her story, not surprisingly, also begins in Jinju City in 1985.
Yes, it sure does. Where unfortunately our stories start to diverge, however, is we were relinquished after being born almost immediately to separate adoption homes, foster homes. And so Emily was adopted from through Holt International in June of 1985. While I had a few medical complications that delayed my adoption, but I was eventually adopted through Eastern Children's Welfare Services in August of that same year. So I arrived in Atlanta on a plane, same story as Emily. However, I had my first road trip on my way home from Atlanta down to Orlando, Florida, where I was raised as an only child in my childhood home that my dad actually still lives in today. But I also had a very fortunate upbringing, being placed in a very loving home where I was a dancer. I loved math and science. I loved to travel with my family. Eventually, I would become a pharmacist, meet my husband in pharmacy school, and get married in 2015. And while I didn't have a child and I grew up an only child, I never had the moments in life that would generate the curiosity and interest in exploring what my biological family story was. I had the same sort of adoption file with a little less information than Emily's file, and that my mother was unknown, my father was unknown. I was always accepting of the story that my parents were told, that the mother was young and just could not care for a baby and therefore was put up for adoption. They did not know that I was a twin, so there's a lot of questions there. What was interesting, at least internationally and in Korea, there's an A file and a B file. The adopted families were initially provided the A file with very minimal information about the family history and the child's time in the orphanage. But as you seek out your birth search, they are able to provide more information. And so I learned that, you know, I had this cardiac condition that had to be monitored early on. But it just having notes on, you know, oh, I was giggling a lot and I was a happy baby and I slept well. You know, not having those stories from when you were born, you don't realize the absence of that, what it means until you actually have it again. So I was very happy to have the additional information from the file eventually, where I could learn a little bit more about where we were actually born. You know, all of my family and friends can tell you exactly what time and what hospital they were born in, but I just knew I came from this one city, but had no idea what the actual origin was. So eventually, you know, get married. Never really asked questions. It wasn't really until, you know, our reuniting that I really became interested in this birth story, and I'm so fortunate to have the ability to explore that now with Emily. It's really insightful to understand some of the things about adoption that impact children as they're adults, as they grow up into adults. Things like perfectionism is common among adoptees, and a lot of the feelings of abandonment, it can be really deep-seated, although you feel this great, you know, you might have this great connection with your adoptive family. There's this underlying fear of abandonment because you just know you've been given up. And that's reflected in the way I have relationships. I'm starting to learn a lot about that, and it's really interesting to explore. But I think some of the most fun aspects of meeting one another has been just looking at pictures. We're basically mirror images. So we have some side-by-side photos to share. It was really incredible. You know, we know what the definition of an identical twin is, so you wouldn't expect to be shocked by the similarities, but throughout the years, they just really were kind of astonishing to us. Yeah, within the first week of Molly and I discovering one another, we were rapidly exchanging photos back and forth, and it was just astonishing to see us through the years. There were actually photos that I sent to Molly, which later on I didn't identify as myself. I thought they were photos of her. So through the years, you can see that we actually had the same haircut growing up. There's another baby photo. But as you go through the years, you can see that our hair was always styled the same. That was, I don't know, our parents were, they had telepathy going on there, but the bangs and the straight style, we'd part them down the middle in the same eras. I mean, there's another slide showing that we actually had the same black and white cat growing up as well. It's the only cat that I had growing up. I think this is the same for you, Molly, right? Yes. And there they are. Our parents also had telepathy when they chose our names. So Emily shared her Korean name was Un, E-U-N, and my Korean name was Moon, M-O-O-N. And my name ended up being Molly, keeping the M, and Emily's name is Emily, keeping the E. We share three consonants in our name. They sound very similar. I mean, you can combine our name and we could just be M Molly. So it feels like the universe was supposed to bring us together eventually, and it's just, we can't believe this is our life.
I think the next slide is our prom photos. No, one more maybe. Oh, there's the part down the middle. Do you want to talk about this one, Mom?
Yeah, so as we were sharing photos, Emily sent me a picture of her at her prom, and I saw it and I just knew I had almost an identical photo. So I ran upstairs, pulled out my prom album, and sure enough, we were in the same sort of strapless beaded gown. We both had these choker necklaces on. We had almost the mirror image hairstyle, very similar makeup, and the way we were posed is just as if we were standing there together. Unfortunately, we didn't experience prom together, but we can certainly look on these photos and smile knowing that maybe we had an inkling of what was to come. So I think in a couple slides forward, here's our graduation photos. And the next slide, this is back in 2009. This is when Izzy was born. Again, you can see the very similar hairstyle. It's probably the only time that both of us had our hair cut that short. But also a very significant time in both of our lives. So I became a mother. And Molly, go ahead, play your side. Yeah, in 2009, I graduated from pharmacy school and was just starting off my career, giving birth to the thing that would eventually shape my career in residency for the years to come. So our focus is shifted in life to these two individual things in the same year, where our lives pretty much changed at the same moment. So there's so many different parallels. We actually, last month, both got promotions at our jobs as well. So we have a lot of the same life experiences, which gives us a little bit of comfort, knowing we're not totally missing out. We can kind of understand what one another has gone through. So last year, Molly and I were also given the opportunity to see the location of our birth center in Jinju City, which is no longer there. It's now a parking lot. The building is gone. But we were also able to watch an interview with the manager of the birth center at the time of our birth. It was a very emotional moment, and I think neither of us realized how significant it would be and how important it was to know where we were born and our true origin story. Molly had mentioned this before. Many people can tell you I was born in this hospital at this time, but we didn't have that information until now, and I hold that very near and dear to my heart. We were also able to locate our birth family, who's pictured here. And similar to seeing the birth center, it was really a shock to see the physical similarities to our birth family and to see them together. So my adoption file has said that we had two older sisters who thought that we or I was a stillbirth. It turns out we have one older sister and also a younger brother who was born 3 years after we were adopted. This was, it's very hard to articulate discovering that our family, our biological family, is still a family together, because while we've expressed today that we were very grateful for the successful lives and very loving families we were placed with in the States, there is a sense of loss in that we couldn't be a part of this loving family that's still together in Korea. And on the next slide, there's an image of, and we have blurred out their faces for purposes of privacy at their request, but we basically look identical to our father, our biological father, and this was very hard to sort of ingest. I think we got these photos around the same time as Father's Day of last year, and it was hard because here I care so much for my own father that raised me in the United States, and yet I see this man who clearly is my father in physical appearance, and I know that they are also grieving because they feel awful that they had to give us up. So it's just so hard to articulate what it means to know that you look like somebody. We're still processing it, and I think for any adoptees that do meet their parents, my father is very excited about this. He wants to meet the family, but I think as the adoptive parents, you should understand too that perhaps there's other things that have to develop for the adoptee before they can sort of jump into exploring this relationship further. I know as I mentioned before, every adoptee's story is different. As we heard before, there are some adoptees that meet their biological parents and don't have that connection, and so sometimes that can bring a way forward, a way for them to move forward with more confidence and ease. I think for us it's a little bit unique in that our family's still together, and so meeting our biological family may not be quite as healing. But I'm just rambling now, so we can continue move forward with the slides. Yeah, I was going to say, we've just to reiterate, we've only known each other since March of 2021. We have spent most of our time just developing our friendship and learning how to be sisters, because although Emily had siblings growing up, she didn't have a sister. And I, again, was an only child. So a lot of the focus has been there. More recently with NAM, National Adoptee Awareness Month, I think we're exploring more with our adoptions. But one thing we were very fortunate to experience together is being on The Amazing Race. But I think the biggest journey that we still have together ahead is maybe going to Korea and continuing to learn how adoption has shaped our identities.
Thank you so much for letting us speak and for struggling through my tears. It's really important, I think, for adoptees to be able to share their stories. It's very healing to speak it out loud and for others to listen, so thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you being able to do this through Zoom. It's not easy. So fortunately, we have a lot of tech we didn't used to have, so it was able to work out. At this point, I have invited Senator Sanacero to do a presentation for us as well. Asked him to join us today, and so I invite Senator Sanacero to the podium.
It's afternoon now. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank, first of all, Linda for hosting this yet again. And as it was last year, a very moving presentation. Marjorie, thank you for sharing your story. It was, I think, really a poignant one and underscored why we're all here today. I don't know if Molly, Emily, and Izzy are still on. They probably aren't. Are they? Okay, so if they can hear me, I want to thank them for telling us about their story. That was truly an amazing journey that they have taken together now, and Izzy for the amazing work that she did, bringing her mom and her previously unknown aunt together and reuniting that family in such a beautiful way. And I have brought with me, which I will ask Linda to present to them when she sees them, a flag of our Commonwealth that we flew over the state capitol in honor of Izzy for what she did in bringing her family together and helping to heal some of those wounds and making the life moving forward now so much more rich and stronger than it was before. So I will give that to Linda before we leave. But let me just say a word or two about this. I don't have any adoptive history in our family, but I am a father. And our oldest, our daughter Nancy, just turned 25, which is hard for me to believe, and any parent will probably know what I'm talking about in that regard. And I mention Nancy because as a young father 25 years ago, it occurred to me, I think it might have been one night at about 2 o'clock in the morning when I was up with her with the bottle feeding her, that being a parent really has so little to do with biology, so much to do with what's here. That is what being a parent is about. And anyone who has been a parent, anyone who has tried to be a good parent understands that that's what it's about. And so each and every person who steps forward to adopt a child, to bring a child into a loving home, becomes the parent or parents and helps heal so much of an important part of our broken world. Because raising children and providing love to our children and giving them that start, that's the most important thing we can do as human beings. Whether we're a parent or just a person in the community, but certainly it starts with being a parent. So for everyone who has stepped forward to adopt a child and provide that loving, caring home, to the children who have come into those homes, and to all the folks and children and youth here in Bucks County and elsewhere who have worked to make that happen, thank you. Thank you for what we call in Judaism, tikkun olam, helping to heal the world. And, you know, the statistics are eye-popping. You know, we have about 14,000 kids in foster care across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I think about 370 here in Bucks County alone. Those kids, they need forever homes. So what you're doing, Linda, and what we're all doing today by highlighting this issue is so critically important to provide that beautiful home, that loving home, that start for these kids, whether they're infants or, as we heard earlier, older kids. It's so critically important. So thank you all, and thank you again for doing this, Linda. And Neil, you did a beautiful job. You should hear him when he does it in Hebrew. It's even better. But this was really a wonderful, once again, a wonderful presentation and a wonderful ceremony. Linda, will you come on up, and I will present this to you. And so Izzy will get this. There's the flag, absolutely.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks very much. I hope to get to meet you guys at some point, Molly and Emily and Izzy. So thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Not done yet. One more thing. We have one more song from my good friend and County Treasurer, Chris Ballerini, at last. Oh, I will. I'll get there. Come on up, Chris, please. I don't think we need one. We don't need one. Can you hear me, Matt? We're good. At last, Thank you, everyone, for coming today. Thank you for participating in the event. Thank you to Children and Youth for all you do. We have a lunch next door, room 112. So please come and join us for lunch, and we look forward to seeing you all again next year. Thank you.